welcome to Roll for Bluff, our recently revamped podcast where we discuss the current events of our Dungeons & Dragons campaign, Bards and Nobles. My name is Sam, I am your host. I also play the cowboy wizard, Chet, and sometimes the tiefling rogue, Cal. You never know who you're going to get on what day, so watch out for that. Joining me today, special guest Tristan, who plays Goliath Barbarian Sorn Thunderfist Jotunhai. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tristan.
I'm happy to be here.
I am glad you're here. And you know what? I am also glad that we are back in it in our campaign.
Yes. I know that you and I lived together and we had to go through the torment together.
Oh, it was awful. Quarantine was not kind.
No, it was one of those things where, like, even if you're a follower of Roll Call, you know that we attempted to start doing detentions with just you and me.
Right.
It felt weird at the time without Brandon being the other input.
Right.
But it did give us time to reflect that we had to revamp a lot of our processes.
And I think in a lot of ways it was good for us because it gave us that extra time to sort of sit down and think, as a group, like how we can rework things, and I think we've come to a what I think is a better setup for us.
Right, yeah, because first and foremost, Roll for Bluff used to be the recap and insight show.
Correct.
And I think during this time we kind of realized that didn't work for anyone who was trying to catch up on the show at the same time.
I think that's always the problem with any TTRPGs is we have a 4-hour long show, and then we were doing like a half-hour to an hour recap. Well, now we have the basically 10-minute or less recap episodes for History Check, which are hosted by Brandon, usually released on Thursdays.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
We try to get so that in case anyone's missed it, they can hop into it. And it's one of those things. Being that I was part of almost every Roll for Bluff that we've done.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, this is the right direction where we kind of separate the insights and the recaps so that people can recap if they want to, but if they want to learn more about how we're feeling about the game, I think this is a great option to go.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. But even more than that, like I said, I'm really glad to be back with the game. We had postponed things. I believe our last official game was around St. Patrick's Day.
Actually, I think you're right. I think we had done the St. Patty's Day special.
Right. And that is where we kind of had left things off. And we didn't come back to this until, beginning of June, end of May?
I want to say beginning of June.
Yeah.
Or the end of May.
So we had a roughly 2-month hiatus, which was rough. I'm glad that we're back at it now, though.
Yeah, we had a lot of performance checks going on, and which
a lot of Brandon playing games on Friday nights just by himself.
Sometimes us on Discord, but
yeah,
there's definitely getting back into getting everyone involved. It took us a little bit to figure out how to get everyone in, like with telecommuting and everyone on camera and setting up the stream.
Right.
I know for me, graphically, as the graphic guy for a lot of our stuff, having to figure out how to make like a Zoom call or whatever we were using at the time work.
Right.
And we apologize as always when
we are recording this from the comforts of our home, and we do have 3 tabaxis who
may make an appearance, such as
who might just take up some screen time. But stream cats, everybody loves them. So anyway, where we want to we kind of want this to take a different direction for the show. And I think that's more of instead of recapping the events of everything that happened, I think once a month we want to sit down with one of our players or the DM and just sort of do like a brief interview. I know that over the last couple of months some things have kind of happened in the events of our campaign.
Right, there's been some ebbs and flows.
Yeah, so where we had sort of left off back in March was we had just gotten our bodies swapped.
Yes. That was a hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah, that really was. To be sit on that cliffhanger for like 2 months. Yeah, it was quite a wait, and I gotta say I wasn't happy about it, but once we did get back into it, you were in Chet's body.
I was in Chet's body, yes.
And Morena was in Sorn's body, and Chet was in Morena's body. So we had the wizard and the sorcerer's body, which was pretty nice. Still spellcasty. We had the sorcerer in the barbarian's body,
and the barbarian in a wizard body.
Which I feel like out of the 3 of us, Soren really got the raw end of the deal.
And for me, because I've talked about on Detention, on Roll for Bluffs, and even on Roll Call, as a player, I am not comfortable with spellcasters, and you see that when we do the one-shots and stuff like that. The most I really delve into is an Eldritch Knight. So being like, okay, you're now a wizard. Like if I was in Morena's body, she still has an adept with the sword and an AC.
Right.
I could, even if I didn't cast a single spell, I could still go in with a sword and
exactly.
do stuff.
You could have done more of a martial approach to things as opposed to Chet, who's like got a dagger and that's it. That's
even that he's
weapons,
not good with,
and even that he ain't good with. So yeah, you really got Soren. Really
I was kind of I got screwed a bit. I got put in the worst case scenario.
But coming from the position of somebody who now really likes playing spellcasters, you did really well.
I appreciate that.
I mean, granted, you had me there like kind of holding your hand through it, but
some of it,
but yeah, you did
as players because even in characters, I imagine if that if this was a real life scenario, that's exactly what Chet would do. Be like, all right, big guy, I need you to focus here. This is how your wizard stuff is going to work right now.
Yeah, Chet would be like, all right, man, see this thing here? This thing's called a Donga Hooper, and this thing's called a Bit Bappin', and you put them together, and you get an explosion.
And then Soren's like, I'm pretty sure that's a wand, and that's a spell.
Yeah, whatever. You got your fancy words, I got mine.
I'm pretty sure mine are the correct ones. Aren't you the wizard?
I feel like that's exactly how that conversation would have gone. We didn't have that conversation, but I feel like that's how it would have gone.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the first big event of coming back was taking down Roulette. Going after this, it was somewhat demonic, somewhat undead entity named Roulette, who had a really fancy spinning wheel that did random magic things.
Right, Brandon, I think, described it as kind of like a Ghostbuster feel kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, Roulette, I joked that Roulette felt like a Danny Phantom villain.
A little bit.
A little.
I can see that, yeah.
But yeah, he was like ghost, demon, just entity of evil walking around in like a carnival costume with a staff with a roulette wheel.
Yeah.
And where he could, because if I remember, he would just spin it and it would cast like one of like 8 spells.
Yeah, it was almost it was a homebrewed item that Brandon had made that basically used the wild magic template. So
that's what it was.
So we did get lucky a couple of times because a couple of times when he spun it, like nothing happened or like it didn't do anything that really like hurt us. So I feel like that could have gone a lot worse. And that encounter, I felt like we did okay for having a little bit of ring rust.
Well, yeah, because I mean, to your point, I think when I was spellcasting, I made some right choices.
Yeah,
because we got hit with like, was it some ooze king or something? It was a big red evil ooze sentient thing.
Yeah, and you were just like, ha, get out of my plane and banish it.
Yes.
Which was a smart call, just getting that out of the action. Giving us a little bit more action economy to work with.
Right. And for the record, Solomon was with us, but he had not switched bodies because he was in a different predicament at the time.
Yeah. So we had that fight, and then shortly afterward, let's talk about Solomon briefly.
Okay.
Because he had, after that battle, kind of gone off, or before that, he had kind of gone off
at the time.
On his own, and we had to go kind of and find him. And then after the battle, he went back to the Church of Paylor where he had a conversation with Paylor in which Paylor sort of took him away. So, what I know how I feel about it and I know how Chet feels about it. I want to know what you and Soren feel about that situation. And obviously there were some real life ties in there as far as Chris's situation, but just from the Solomon perspective.
Right. With the backstory, if you watch Roll Call and you've seen Chris and I have been friends since kindergarten, so we're talking about like 25 years of friendship.
Right.
I was very excited. He's taking place in a bunch of one-shots. He's joined this campaign. He was part of another campaign with you. So I, as a person, I was sad to see him go because, it's a good friend.
Right.
And, I like having my friends involved in the stuff that I do as I integrate myself much into the stuff that my friends do. I mean, it's how we got started in D&D in the first place.
True.
Brandon's like, I play D&D. I'm like, I guess I'll integrate myself into that.
D&D, what's that? Falls down the rabbit hole.
And then I started a company with.
Yeah, that's how that goes.
But as a player, as a character, it's tough because Solomon and Soren butted heads quite often due to very different, ideals or just. Because Solomon was like more chaotic good, whereas Soren was a lawful good. They're on the side of good, but just choices made rubbed him the wrong way.
Yeah.
And they butted heads, but ultimately he was a Stormbreaker. As people join these teams, he sees them as the Stormbreakers, and you kind of see it at the end of like when Solomon leaves. Soren is really broken up, even though he I shouldn't say he hated him, but after he, was, he wasn't very, as connected with someone like Cal or Bilal or some of these other people.
Right.
Soren has, I've talked about this on stream where Soren is going through this, like, depressive, like, I'm losing everyone.
Soren's gonna have abandonment issues after that.
Everybody absolutely
leaves me.
I mean, because in game canon, his father hasn't died too long ago at this point. I mean, this is only maybe a couple of weeks, a month, or it's not like it's been a couple of years.
I would say it's probably been like 2 weeks since that. 2 or 3 weeks since that actually happened in game. So
right,
yeah,
it's been like about a month since he lost his father. Calmine had her whole deal. Now she's off somewhere else. We lost Bilal. We lost Rhaegarn. So Soren is dealing with like these. Leon's gone. It's like, so he's just like, everyone who I've gone on these adventure with are leaving, and I'm starting to feel alone. Like we joke and we talk about how he's the last Stormbreaker, right? Of the original crew, and Soren's happy to like have more people join and be part of this group, but you definitely saw after Solomon left, everyone was kind of like, wow, I guess Soren doesn't really feel. He was like, okay, bye, and then moved on. But then we talk about when we were walking back to the hotel. Soren is just like dead to the world.
Yeah, he goes and gets a drink and like just wants to
and he's forcing Chet and Miranda. He's like, "Here's 10 gold. Go on a date. Right. Enjoy each other at this time. Please do."
Right.
Because he's just sad that he's losing everyone, and it's not even his fault. And I think that's the worst part.
Yeah,
is that he has no control over it.
And I mean, I think that there's probably something to be said as far as character development of like. There probably is a lesson in there, something about like not trying to control the things around you, but whatever. That's too meta. I'm not gonna get into that. Right. But immediately following that, we did get to make a new friend.
We did,
who was
yes.
Hemnes, and Hemnes and Soren really seemed to get that buddy thing going really quick, which was good.
He was, I think, for Soren, it was a friend right when he needed one.
Yeah.
And it because he's Soren, he's always treated specifically because he's an 8-foot tall Goliath barbarian. Hemnes was just like, hey, big bud, I've never seen one of you before. Or, do you hate me? No, you're really neat. Okay, cool, yeah.
I've never seen one of you either.
Are you a tiny tiefling? And for those of you who don't know, Hemnes is a satyr. It's recently a more new character, right. A race that you can play in D&D. So, so I guess, so with a little backstory of Sean, bringing Sean in. Sean has been in one-shots with us before.
Right.
Sean is someone, another person from my past.
Sean was also an OG Stormbreaker prior to us streaming.
Yes, when we first started playing with Brandon, like when the campaign started, he had played a bard named Aristotle, who was an Argonauty.
And then Sean had to leave for personal reasons, but since then he's joined us back, and we're really happy to have him back.
Absolutely.
And he decided to play Hemnes, who was a satyr monk.
Mm-hmm.
I was really glad to see, though, that Soren sort of very quickly formed this bond with Hemnes, especially because I think for me, like, I was focusing on that bond that I was building with Morena as Chet.
Right.
So it was one of those things where it kind of took that pressure off of trying to, lift Soren up while still maintaining that balance with Morena and figuring out what we were romantically like.
Right. And I think as a player, I had to make the decision. Because we know that I come from a theater background. I'm very character driven when it comes to performing and creating. But we kind of ran into issues when I was trying so hard with that back when we were in Selbin. With Cal and everything, where I was having Soren go through grief of his father, and we just realized that didn't translate really well in a stream sense, because if it was like a TV show that was in short bits and we can just see it with the ups and downs,
right?
Whereas at this point, I was going through like each session was a stage of grief, so that meant like 4 hours of watching me be mopey or angry, and it was hard. So that's why I think when it came to like Solomon leaving, I really wanted to play into that fact that Soren was sad and abandoned. I mentioned it as a player to kind of give that insight during that time. But when he's sad, I was like, okay, I can't have him be sad the whole time. Oh, he's made a new friend at the bar. He'll enjoy that moment, and he'll build that friendship there and have that kind of that uplifting thing. And also because I think as a player, I didn't want to take away from your time with building the rapport with Morena, because that's a huge part of Bards and Nobles right now, is this couple whose love is blossoming.
Love is
blossoming. So I didn't want to try and, like, I guess as a player taint that any more than I had to.
Well, and it was also probably partially for Sean's benefit too, you know, coming back into this campaign, you know, and he plays in another one of my campaigns off stream, but coming back into a campaign that he hasn't been a part of for what, like, well over a year now, almost a year and a half probably.
Yeah.
You know, and jumping in as a new character, you know, just having somebody there making it a little easier to, like, fill that void, you know, that we kind of needed. I think that made it easier for him. So I would say that, you know, having Sean come in and Hemnes come in at that time when he did was good for Soren.
Right.
And just kind of worked out really well for the party.
Yeah, and I definitely think because if you know us outside of D&D or even on screen, you know that Sean and I have a lot of chemistry together.
Yeah, you do.
Again, we've known each other for like 15 years. I keep friends forever.
Yeah, you do.
But Sean is very much, you know, my brother in a lot of ways. I mean, to the point where people think we are actually siblings.
And you guys definitely vibe off of one another very easily. It's kind of interesting sometimes. Like even if you don't get to watch all of the show, but catch a scene with like Hemnes and Soren, like they play off of one another like way more naturally better than like I could ever play with somebody because just, you know, Sean and Tristan, like, as friends have just known each other so well that, like, one of them can start a bit and then the other one will play into it, and before you know it, you've got, like, this nightmare fuel inducing bit going on, but it's hilarious and it works for some really weird reason.
You know, and some of that comes with our history because we were in theater together.
Right.
We make short films together. We were in clown school together. Yeah. And so he and I bounce together very well, which makes some great comical moments because, like, the night of meeting Hemnes, you know, Morena and Chet stay the night in one room for their love blossoming.
Right.
And it was like, Hemnes, do you have a room? No? Well, you can just stay with me. And we made the joke that they share the bed, and then they wake up, and, like, Soren's, like, holding Hemnes.
They're, like, cuddled.
And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. You're fine with this. And, you know, it was very funny to Maxie's story. But, I mean, yeah. And you see that even later, that the characters themselves have a similar mindset. This is jumping in the future a bit towards the more recent episodes where it came to the emissary things. If you're curious about what some of this is, definitely rewatch the recaps, because, again, we go into these. But with the emissary bit where Soren's making it very clear that he's like, I'll do the emissary, but I'm ready to fight and die for anything. And Hemnes is like, you know what? I agree with Soren.
Yeah.
He's like, I have no allegiances. I'm from the Feywilds. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I did want to touch briefly on the emissary bit, you know, because following you know, the next events with Chet's speech and Chet getting shot, you know, then we were taken back to the castle to meet the king with Devin.
Sorry, I'm also just thinking about when Chet got shot. That was another moment where Soren was like, God damn it, I'm not losing another one.
And let me tell you, it was real close to losing another player.
Oh my God, so close.
There was a couple times where I was like, if we fail this, I'm going to die.
And of course some of that is on me for not remembering things that I have, because we had taken that 2-month break from D&D, and I forgot. Like, I have a lantern that would have stabilized you every time. Instead, I'm like, I'm running out of potions.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? We survived. That's all that matters. You know, but you know, following those events, we go and we meet the king, and you know, I think that when it comes to the group dynamic right now, you know, it's kind of how it's always been, where it's kind of like you and me are like the faces of the group.
Yes.
Because at this point, like, Morena's gonna kind of go with whatever Chet wants. Chet's gonna kind of go with whatever Morena wants, but, like, he's also, like, the chaotic good character, so, you know, he's not gonna do anything that's gonna really break the law.
Right, and Hemnes is so spanking new, he doesn't want to interfere with it.
Right, and so Hemnes probably feels like it doesn't, you know, isn't his place to make decisions, so that leaves Soren, and that leaves, you know, Chet/Morena. And since Morena's like, whatever you want to do, baby, Chet's like, all right, I guess we're going with whatever I want to do.
Can we just say for the record how it must be a whirlwind for Hemnes to, like, kind of like, no one likes me, blah, I got a friend. I'm part of a team. I'm now an emissary of a king. This is happening very quickly.
Things escalate. I would actually Hemnes will probably be my next interview. So we'll find out next month.
One. Yeah.
But
yeah, we're still predominantly the faces, like when we're meeting with the king.
So when we have this big decision to make, where the king's like, "Hey, I want you guys to be emissaries. If you do this, like, you know, you will have to obey my word, blah, blah, blah. But, like, also, I'll make it easier for you guys to be traveling heroes. We don't want you guys going unchecked in the realm. Which, you know, Chet was like, all right, makes sense. Like, but Soren, you know, I think felt a little bit differently. He felt like a little bit of, I don't want to be, like, chained down or tied to something.
Right. Or he doesn't want someone to specifically give him the orders because... I mean, because we talk about, like, his past with his father being a chieftain, and that's a king making a decision that was like, I'm your son that just tried to save someone, and now you're banishing me from the family.
Right.
Or we've seen the Colosseum is a huge example, I think, where someone's like, I'm doing everything for good, but they end up being an evil person. Bellington that we talk about was our first example of a royalty person who ended up being absolutely evil. Yeah, and Soren's already kind of rubbed the wrong way with how the events.
And there's something to be said about the amount of distrust that I think. And this is not a shot at Brandon, but I think there's been a big amount of distrust that our DM has set within the players to the point where, like, it doesn't matter how nice somebody is to us, we're kind of like, yeah, I don't buy a word you're telling me right now.
Right, like there's that small inkling in the back of your head that even someone like Baba, the most beloved
or that
turtle,
innocent dwarf child who somehow has a pact with Azazel is like some evil demon monster. I don't know, but so I think there's something to be said for that, you know. And then on the other hand, I mean,
especially with Soren being there from the beginning, this is a character who has lived through all the events of the Stormbreakers. Where even if you were like Chet's been in for a little bit, but there's still like a laundry list of things that happened before Chet's arrival.
And there's some differences too, because I think Chet, in a lot of ways, isn't really tied to anything. You know, especially with this new development with Morena, because before that he was hung up on an ex-lover, and you know, now that he has Morena, he's like, you know what, I'm not tied to this person anymore. Like, I don't really have any allegiances. I don't really have anything. Like, I just want to make the world a better place.
Right.
So for Chet, I don't think... I mean, even with the Stormbreakers, as weird as this sounds to say, Chet doesn't really see himself as a Stormbreaker. He sees himself more as, like, I'm just along for the ride as long as I'm here.
Right.
You know... And
that's fair.
On the other hand, and this is not to knock you as a player, not to knock Soren as a character, but I think to some degree there was a little bit of selfishness with Soren being like, you know, And like you said, obviously, like, evil things have tricked us in the past, and we're not gonna fall for that. But I think there was also a little bit of that part of, like, I'm a strong, independent Goliath, and I don't need no king to tell me what to do. Like, I think there was a little bit of that too.
Well, and of course that comes to character-wise, where he's been on his own for so long, being that lone hero. I mean, because that's his background. He's a folk hero. He's the traveling giant that helps.
Right.
So, and he fights for what he feels is truth and whatnot. So. Having a royal king being like, I will tell you what is wrong and right, and he's like, no.
Yeah, and so, you know, we can kind of see that. I mean, you know, the group ultimately, we try to act like a democracy when we can.
Right,
so...
and Soren made that very clear, especially when he and Cal were butting heads so often.
Yeah.
It was one of those things like, you know what, fine, we'll leave this up to votes, and we'll go and do that. So even with Cal's absence, Soren is still trying to hold himself because he's honorable. That he's still trying to hold himself.
Dang lawful good
I
alignment.
know. It's not like that's what
Darn having a code of morals. I don't know what that's like.
Dang, it's like playing
Chaotic
Fallout and then just feeling bad for using the mean dialogue.
right.
But yeah, like even with Cal's absence, Soren is still like feels that he needs to honor that agreement with whatever rendition of the Stormbreakers is.
Yeah.
Like in a way, he's almost like Logan from the X-Men, when the X-Men keep changing and he's still there, and he's just like, I gotta stay by the same rules.
Yeah.
Even though Professor X did.
So speaking of honoring agreements, there is one thing I want to touch on. Just really, really briefly. I don't want to go too much into this. Right. We did have a little bit of an interaction with Fox.
Yes.
Who had offered for us to basically, if we took care of Bellington, he would help us maybe by pointing us in the right direction or helping us fix Devon, more or less. And I know that, you know, you and I as players are like, oh my god, like I know
that would be so much. That would help so much.
Right. And I know on the other hand, like I love Fox as a player, but like as a character, fucking hate him.
Right, and that's where Soren is definitely at.
So, you know, I think it's one of those things where when that came up, you know, I really feel like Chet and Soren were definitely on the same wavelength with that, because
right,
it was
as
like
characters, absolutely.
It was one of those things that was like, you could help us, but what's the cost here? And he was like, well, somebody else would get Devin's curse, and we're like, you know what?
Who gets that
good
curse?
Because we don't feel like doling out some evil shit to some
right.
Real
I mean,
that's
that's almost like an alignment shift.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I felt. I didn't think that either one of us because I think Morena's a chaotic neutral, so I think for
she
her,
would have. She'd be like, give it to someone.
And so is Cal. Cal probably would have
heard a little bit.
Cal would have
pressed a little bit, like, come on, can't you tell us?
But I think Cal might have gone for that deal too. Whereas knowing Chet, he wouldn't have gone for that. That just wasn't going to happen.
And I think some of it was because we've talked about this both on stream and off, where the pot was tried to sweeten
just a little. Like he could have like taking out Bellington is something that was already on our agenda. It's on our Christmas wish list, kill Bellington. And I think that I've told you this before, and just so everybody else knows, if Fox had come to us and straight up been like, yeah, I want you to kill Bellington, we'd have been like, all right, where is he? And right, that would have been that.
If that was that, if it was like, deal with Bellington, and I'll point you in the direction of the artifact. We would have been much more, if it wasn't like a straight up deal, because if he opened up a seal on us, it would be like, no, thank you. Because Soren's like, I ain't deal with that shit.
Yeah.
Or if he had given a timeline, if he's like, whenever you deal with him, I'll give it to you.
Right.
But when the deal was sweetened even more so of taking it off and putting it on someone else, that was where it was like,
that was too much. He put too much out there, and I think, for Brandon, he probably thought there's no way they'll turn this deal down. They want to help Devin. They love Devin. Sam personally has a vested interest in Devin because that's Cal's. But I think it was just a little. I think it was just over the line for them, and that's why they turned it down. And honestly, I'm sure Fox will come back and just totally browbeat us for it. But that's a problem for future Stormbreakers.
Yeah, it's like when you take any classic villain, and because this isn't just a newer character. This is Fox. We have such a history with him.
Yeah,
it's like if Darth Vader walks up to Luke and was like, "Do this thing, and I'll do this nice thing," and Luke is gonna be like, I don't trust that.
Dad, chill out.
That's not believable, or there's a catch. Or you'll do the pray I do not change it again.
But we'll figure that out later. We'll burn that bridge while we're on it, crossing it, and drown in the river. It's fine. So towards the end of this segment, where we currently are right now, we just walked into the Artificer's quarters,
with Unique,
where we're getting ready to fight some living spells, which is really cool. It's from Eberron. It's in Nito. If you have not used it as a DM, look into them because they're fun.
And we gotta fight Taker.
And so in the past we fought a clockwork dragon named Keeper, which was an evil clockwork dragon. This one that we fought has been made by an artificer kobold named Unique, and they have basically made it kind of a good version,
right?
Sort of
whereas
like
Kiefer was this gold bronze, just this
made of
color.
Weaponry and
and then this new one's steel and shields and stuff like that, which is why I keep calling it Taker. And Brandon hates it so much, and I don't care. I think it's a great.
So name. We're getting ready to fight those. But let me ask you, what are some things as either a player or as Soren that you are kind of either hoping to see or excited to see coming up?
I hope for the day that Soren is powerful enough to squish Fox's stupid face. I don't, at this point,
that's also on the Christmas wish list.
Especially for Soren. I know that we've had, if you watch the stream or even go back with some old Roll for Bluffs and stuff like that, where there's talks of that maybe he's not quite what he seems.
Yeah.
Even if it turned out that way, Soren is still I just want to be no spells for you, grab your face and just.
Yeah, and I think, the only person who would really probably try to defend his actions is not currently there. So,
right. As far as other things I'm looking forward to, with one of our last sessions, we leveled up, and I made a decision that I didn't think I was actually going to decide, and Soren is now multi-classing.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to that. Did you? I mean, I don't want to I don't want you to give away your secrets or spoil anything, but or how are you feeling about that?
I'm nervous because Barbarian is something that I sit comfortably in. I really enjoy it because it's simple, just point and hit.
Yeah. Hit, rage.
But repeat. I mean, the problem that or I guess it's not even a problem. The character development of Soren has changed. We've talked about when I first started playing D&D as Soren Thunderfist. I was going to play a barbarian who was going to be like traditional barbarian,
big, dumb, stupid smash.
Right.
And Soren's not that.
No, Soren, like, because I always describe it as Soren went from being like originally he was going to be like just this Viking berserker, and now he's the Marvel Cinematic Thor.
Yeah.
Where he's a little bit more tactful, he's a little dumb, but he's got a good heart.
But he makes up for it with his good heart and his funny quips.
Yes. Soren is multi-classed into fighter, and we've been planting seeds of this for a while.
Right.
With the Book of Runes that Odin has given me.
Right, and then like the symbolism of like having the eye taken, much like Odin's was missing
for wisdom and stuff like that.
And just like real briefly, I want to call out to Brandon. I think he's done really good as far as implementing a lot of Norse mythology into this.
Absolutely, he's taken some liberties, and he and I, have talked about them. But like, because for anyone who knows me, I'm a hardcore Norse guy. I mean, I wear I don't just wear this for stream. I've worn a Thor's hammer for the last 20 years.
Right.
He's done a lot of research. When I've mentioned something, he knows what I'm talking about. When it's like when we were fighting, we were doing sea stuff, and I was bringing up the sea giant.
Oh, yeah, the sea giant.
And they were like, oh, yeah, we worship him as well. It was like, okay, cool, you brought that up.
Or, like, bringing up Yggdrasil, am I saying
Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil, I can't remember.
The Tree of Life.
Yeah.
He's brought in Loki. He's taking some liberties where his Thor is blonde and, versus the traditional Thor is a redhead.
Right.
And, I mean, he's allowed, he's as a DM, he's allowed to take those things. And I roll with them, and I'm not going to sit there and criticize him.
But I really do think that he's done a really good job
Absolutely.
of implementing that, especially because it's something that I feel is important to you and to your character.
As to my character, yes. He's been planting seeds with, again, like the eye thing being in Call to Odin. The runes have been pretty heavily involved.
Right.
Because, this can be something that I can tell now. Is if anyone has any knowledge of D&D, they can probably guess where I'm going, why I'm multi-classing in fighter, is that they have a Rune Knight fighter who uses runes of the giants, which are remarkably similar to Nordic runes, which Brandon might be kind of merging the line a little bit more than normal.
Right.
So that, because Soren has been pretty connected to the giants, the Jotunheim is a reference to the Jotun for Norse mythology giants.
Right.
So the goal is to become a Rune Knight, at least get to level 3 fighter and use some of the runes.
Right.
To further, and I mean, in Soren it doesn't play like a barbarian, because we always joke that I never use my reckless attack,
right?
And you think I'm nuts for it.
I think you're crazy. As somebody who's played a barbarian, use your reckless attack. Use it. It's worth it.
And if I were a mindless barbarian, yes, I would 100%. But I'd play Soren so much more like a fighter to a degree, because he's trying to be more tactful. Like, it's like, oh, I don't want someone to get advantage to hit me in this situation. So he's like, I'll just stick with...
Yeah, you're a bit more of a tactician. And in the back of my mind, Soren's always felt like a bit more of a fighter, than a barbarian, which is fine. Like,
it doesn't have to learning
fit
D&D
that
at
mold. Like, but so I think, if anything, I think that the multi-classing will come almost a little bit more naturally than you might think.
Get more hits in.
So I think that's about all that we have time for today. I really appreciate you. Obviously, you don't have a choice being here. I've had him trapped in my basement.
No. The ring won't come off.
I've had him trapped in my basement for the last 4 months during quarantine, so...
We live here.
Live. That's what he says. But I appreciate you being here and sort of giving us a little bit of Soren's insight. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching, if not, you need to be watching. Always
just be listening.
You could just be listening. Listen to. It's fine. You don't have to look at our faces. But be sure to check out the show. We might be doing a time change coming up. Some of our player schedules are getting a little wonky.
Real life.
Yeah, real life. Normally we do 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fridays. That may be shifting to 7. If it does, we'll be posting on social media about that. And if we do, that'll probably be a sooner change. You can always check out me on Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Vampire the Masquerade. And you can also feel free to check out our DM on his personal stream, Tragic Backstory, on Twitch. And until next time, have a lovely day. And don't forget to roll for Bluff.
We'll work on the slogan.
Yeah, we'll work on it. I didn't roll very high. I failed. Not one. Bye.